Snail Mail's Valentine. It is 10 songs, 31 minutes long. And this was something that Sean wanted to throw on the rundown.
It was released, I believe, first or second week of November, so not too long ago. But something that I wanted to get into was more of the women in India are killing it game, because it's something that we like to say a lot on this podcast, and it's another album that will prove that point. Yeah. Anyways, going into it, opening track, title track of Valentine. I think it's like a solid indie song for it. I think actually a good if someone asked me like what is her sound or whatnot, and I think a good explanation is if you mixed the Japanese house with B2B, you mix them together, that's what Snail Mail sounds like. Because her voice reminds me a ton of the of Japanese house, but then also the way she does a lot of her music arrangements and stuff sounds a lot like B2B, but obviously in her own way. But that's a good way to explain it to people who haven't heard Snail Mail before. Um, Valentine gets you like right into directly into the album of how it's gonna sound. It slowly builds and builds. And I love the chorus in there. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of well thought outness in that track. Second one, you have Ben Franklin, which I've heard a lot this year. That and Valentine I've heard a lot for some reason on like radio stations and other stuff. Um, and it's another good track. I really like the way it starts off with the drums and everything, and it's like a pretty solid second track.
I really liked
Um,
Ben Franklin a lot. I kept coming
mhm.
back to that. It's a pretty short album, kind of one of the albums where, like, if you listen to it all the way through, you can kind of not notice, like, oh wow, it started over again. And I think that's
Yeah,
something to be
yeah,
said about how,
that actually it's funny you said that. That literally happened to me because I
yeah,
went back and then went back up. I'm like, oh, I'm listening to Valentine. Holy shit, the album's already over. But I mean, it's 31 minutes, so it's not like a 20-minute album per se. But everything flows so well together that it feels like it's complete, but it feels
yeah.
like it goes by fast, which I guess is a I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
Yeah, to finish off my earlier point, I was saying like Ben Franklin was always the song where I recognized that like, oh, the album has started over again, because I think it is like a really kind of standout, distinct kind of song in
It's a
that
good
it is, yeah, it's a good track, but it kind of goes for the kind of bassier lower tones in that, whereas the
Mhm.
rest of it kind of goes for the, I guess, Biba Doobie esque indie punk rock inspirations, right? A
Yeah, that
lot
like
of it kind of goes more into that.
the
Yeah, grunge. That's
grunge-ish
exactly what I'm kind of going
style
for.
and stuff that you get a lot in indie, which I guess it would be my only complaint is that because that sound can get a little underwhelming at times, but that's just I think that's what when we get to our state of the music of early next year, that's something that I want to be approved upon with a lot of these artists that I like. Example, B to like and a couple other a bunch of these indie artists. You don't get that with Remy Wolf because her music is very unique in the way that she produces everything. A lot of these bedroom pop indie artists, you're getting to sound pretty similar to one another. So now, I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do to push the envelope? Like, you've made these great records. I want a little bit more now. But anyways, more into the review. Headlock, Light Blue are also good tracks, kind of getting towards the middle of the record. Light Blue slows it down, and you get to hear her voice a little bit more within there, which I like. Um, Forever Sailing, um, kind of again slows it down towards the middle, but it gets you that more raw emotion and a little bit more of that. Relies a little bit more of the production and the songwriting aspects of it. But I like that because I want that in these indie albums. I don't want like Brent Franklin 25 times. I want more like I want more emotion. I want different tracks and stuff so that way you can hear that. And you get that with this album. And that's one reason I wanted to put in this because that was a complaint I had with indie records. And I think Snail does a fantastic job with really getting that perfect bedroom pop sound that we've heard for the past 3, 4 years and making it into a really good, concise, precise album.
Yeah, like Forever Sailing has the it's like one of those, and I'm thinking of things we reviewed earlier this year, like kind of like Easy on Me by Adele. It's like a
Mhm,
piano
mhm.
ballad led singer
Yeah,
songwriter kind of song. But it's definitely like a far more indie-ish, almost like low fi or like lower thick
yeah,
thing spin on
yeah.
it. Whereas like Adele's meant to be like a grand production you think of as an orchestra. Snail Mail's is a like a lot more of a chill affair.
It's
But you are, what you're really getting at is just like really beautiful music that, yeah, it breaks out of that sort of indie rut that can be this mix of sounds that are calling back to a certain era, kind of 90s, 2000s ish, that is nice when you do it the first couple times, but when every artist is doing a version of this, it can start to kind of drown out the sound and it forces indie to go, okay, let's quickly reiterate and do something else. But you
Yeah.
get decent range in this. I'll say, like, my critique of this is that as an album, after Forever Sailing, I think it sort of starts to figure out and try to find its way. And it's, again, kind of a short drop kind of thing. And so you don't have a lot of room or space to meander too much without it
Yeah.
sticking out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think Madonna Said All Glory, I think, are really nice songs. I'm not saying
So
they're like
Glory, I
filler or
think, is a
anything.
fantastic track. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that around that part of the drop is where you sort of see, like, okay, this is here, this is good, but maybe should have gone a different place. Maybe should these two tracks have been a standalone EP? But it seems like it's kind of missing what's all coming together. Like, I want to call this an album or I want to call this a drop, but those two kind of throw it off a little bit and make it almost seem more like it's a collection of songs. But thankfully, you get songs like Glory and Automate afterwards that bring
Mhm.
it like right back. I
I
was
was
really
gonna
liking
say, 'cause
Automate
the ending
especially.
tr the 3 ending tracks for me is what wrap up the album Fantastical, Glory, Automate, and Mia. You ca If she didn't have those 3 tracks there, or if one of them was missing, it wouldn't have been the same without those. With those there, it really wraps up with everything towards the beginning that you heard of the good tracks, Valentine and Ben Franklin, but it still links up everything in the middle as well. I think she does a good job with that.
Yeah. Of those three, what was your favorite? I mean, you mentioned Glory, but I was
Glory is
like,
good. I like Automate a ton.
yeah, Automate, I think, was my favorite. I think that's just a really good, like, album ending culmination of what she's got, like, going on and what she's working with.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like kind of, soft but loud in that way rock can be. And so,
Mhm.
like, indie rock can be and feel, and it can convey that emotion really nicely. And so, really happy for Snail Mail, whose real name is Lindsay Jordan. But I do want to, before this review rounds out, note that she was about to do like a US and European tour, but she's had to postpone it because of a emergency, like, immediate vocal cord surgery, I believe.
Yeah, so, um, Lindsay Jordan is her name. So she put out a statement of, "I've been struggling with my vocal health more and more each year. I lose my voice after a couple of days of singing. I went to see an ENT last week and they found massive polyps in my vocal cords. Surprising vocal trauma due to talking. Shocker. That needs to be operated to prevent permanent damage to my voice." She said that the recovery time is 3 months and speech therapy, an effort to make sure the rest of the tour can happen. Which is crazy that she still wants to do the tour and everything after getting vocal cord surgery. Like, fuck, props. And please get well soon.
Yeah.
Health is more important than touring. Trust me.
Um,
Look at Talkie Monster.
100%. We were joking a little bit off air beforehand, but like there's something to be said about, like, I think Talkie Monsters is one of the more amazing stories that we talked about. Well, Sean didn't, but on an early episode of Audioface where you were out for, I think, a health sports related thing, which brings all this like coming out together. But
Yeah,
Tammy
right.
and
I
I
think
were,
that was
yeah,
my concussion. Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, Tammy and I were doing an audio face episode together, and we were talking about Talkie Monster and how she kind of like recovered from a major brain injury and sort of relearned a lot of things, but also relearned how to make music. And then it's not like Talkie Monster's music was like bad beforehand, but she makes the transition of an artist over time getting better and better at making music, but she does it incredibly well. Like, for an artist, it's amazing, but then you have to look at the fact of like what she had to overcome and go through, and it's even bigger than that. So this is kind of reminiscent of that to some extent. I mean, I'm not gonna do a Pression of Olympics of, is brain injury worse than vocal injury? Because like I mean, like, if we're gonna get into dark Dan world, like, if I have a sign of strep throat, for me as a person who is increasingly like investing in myself as a talker and podcaster,
Mhm,
it
mhm.
freaks me out because I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, I just like I can't do anything. I cannot. It physically hurts to talk when I have strep throat, and I get that fairly often, and so it just kind of concerns me. A brain injury, like, I don't know what I could or couldn't do with that. These are things that like concern me that I worry about. But I'm really, yeah, hope the best for Snail Mail and her recovery through this. It's gonna be a long one, but I'm at least, yeah, excited to see that she's really eager to do it and get through it. But the
Yeah.
album. Yeah, overall, thank you for introducing this to me. This is one of those
Mhm.
things where we've said this back and forth. Wouldn't listen to this were it not for this podcast, just like randomly throwing in there. But I'm glad this is in the repertoire now.
Arbitrary scale this week is Black Friday out of stock stuff because, yeah, the more out of stock it is, the better, I guess. This is food, like just the general over consumption of food. Like you had Black Friday, you had different sales and shit, and then you also had Thanksgiving, so you can't get your basil, you can't get your mayonnaise, whatever you need. Like there's a lot of shit that's out there that isn't out there.
Yeah, it's hard to get just general like random produce items you're good on. Some random produce items you're not gonna find in any store around you. Um,
Exactly.
I will just casually say, uh, plant-based people, vegans, vegetarians, up 3 points because I had absolutely no problem finding that stuff because it's a different process to make that. So